Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live right here in Lubbock, Texas, and it's kind of dark out there today. Looks like we might be getting some rain this afternoon. So it's Thursday night, July 18th, and we're right here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios, and we're live on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. We're live on all of our social media sites. We are live, and we are coming to you, and we are ready to go, and we got a good show for you tonight, and I hope you guys are doing great out there. Hope you had a great day. I hope everything's going your way, and so great conversations today at The Rock. Great conversations with people. Been busy all day long. Did our workouts this morning. Had a little bit of opportunity. We got a book review coming next Wednesday. We'll see if we can get back to some of these book reviews that we've been doing. I got a whole stack of books over there that I want to get back on the book reviews. And we've gotten away from it for a while, but the next one is Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Dr. Daniel Amen, MD. Good book, good stuff. Dr. Amen has got a bunch of experience, lots of brain scans, lots of great philosophy, and I think you're going to love the book. I think you're going to love all the information that you get from the book. Got a couple little supplements we're going to add to our program after reading that book. So it's going to be good. We'll do that on Wednesday night. We'll do the book review next week. Good conversation today with a new patient who is a nurse who came to me with lots of skepticism and lots of comments from her medical doctor about how she should never get her neck adjusted. And just really interesting stuff. You know, as you guys know how I feel about that's and we've talked about that lots of times, and sometimes I get all fired up about it, but I'm not going to tonight. In the state of Texas, I have the responsibility of knowing whether or not a person should get adjusted or they shouldn't get adjusted, and I don't need anyone else's opinion on that. Not to make my responsibility. So, of course. I totally disagreed with that person. And after talking about it, talking through it, answering all the questions, she had lots of good, serious, solid questions. And I showed her everything. She said, the first thing she said was, do all chiropractors learn the same thing? Because I've been to lots of different chiropractors, and this is the first time I've heard all this stuff. And I said, well, we basically get taught the same thing. But not all chiropractors are the same. Not all chiropractors want to work hard at their craft. And the ones that do want to work hard at their craft, some of them are just working on different things. Some of them don't work on the things that I work on. They work on things that are totally different. And if they had a conversation about the things that they did, I would be the one that would look like I wasn't working hard or whatever. And that's not. I sure don't mean that in sort of arrogant way. I simply mean that there are guys out there who are working super hard, but they're working on their thing and they're really good at their thing. And I might not know what they're doing. I might not understand why they're doing it, or like they may be into like maybe like diplomats in orthopedics or something like that, or a lot of pediatric stuff that we do in chiropractic. Some of them are super awesome at pediatric stuff. They know way more about the pediatric stuff than I do. That doesn't mean that I can't adjust children. I adjusted a little one today. She's 3 months old. She's just now starting to roll over. And she's only rolling over one direction. And she's having trouble nursing on both directions. She does really well on one side, but not the other. And so we were working with her mom on that and adjusting the baby and working through some of that stuff. So, which is super cool to me because I adjusted a 90-something-year-old today and a 3-month-old today. And that's great in the chiropractic office. But also, I adjusted this nurse today. And I felt like as we were going through it, I was very serious about what we were doing. I was very serious about communicating what we were doing to her, with her, and why we would do it, and what I found in my exam. And And then the second question she had after she asked me about all the chiropractors, and I said, "Yeah, well, it's we all pretty much learned the same thing. We just practice differently." And then she's like, "What is the problem? Why is there so much pushback from the medical side in this?" And I was like, "Well, the truth is, there's not near as much pushback from the medical side as there used to be. I know that for a fact, because it used to be horrible. But it's gotten way better as time has gone by. So I don't think I think this one particular doctor that she's talking to, uh, that just needs. I said, if your doctor was sitting right there in that chair and he listened to all the things that I told you based on the physical examination that I got, I would be super surprised if he had something that he called into question over all the stuff right there, because it's all science. It's not opinion. When we're going through your case, it's not an opinion. It's science. And so it was really good. She was so happy with her visit. Once I adjusted her neck, she was just like, I can't believe that's all there was to it. That was so simple. She's like, I was all stressed out over that. And I'm like, it's kind of what I thought. I was like, I mean, you're all stressed out over that. It's not, it was really, really easy. It was super gentle. It was very specific. It was very specific in the pattern. It was trying to drive her brain. The whole thing was good. And so I think we're in good shape, and I think she's going to do fantastic. And I think we're moving her away from surgery and moving her to some things. And we tied in all of the things that are going on with her. Tied in all of her symptoms to the pathway. You get into that up and to the right, over to the left pathway, and you'll start to see the pattern of how it all works together. So it was a really good visit with her. I'm glad she's here. Glad we're taking care of her. And I told her, I said, look, I don't know anything about nursing. Like, you're the expert in nursing. I'm not the expert in nursing. I don't know anything about nursing. Matter of fact, at one time I was going to the bank on a Friday afternoon, and it's right over here on 82nd Street, just past Slide in Lubbock, for you guys that are local. But if you guys that aren't local, it's a pretty busy boulevard, uh, in Lubbock, whatever you would call it. There's six lanes. There's 3 lanes coming this way. There's a turning lane in the middle. There's 3 lanes going that way. And we had pulled into the turning lane to turn left into the bank. And there was an old man in a car that was on the street right there next to the bank, and he was trying to turn left onto the big, like, on this big street. He was trying to turn left, so he had to cross all 3 lanes of traffic. And he just decided to go. I mean, he looked like he might have been 80 years old, something. He just decided to go. And he pulls out, and the first line of traffic that's closest to him, they see him and they stop. And then the second line sees him and stops. But the third line, the poor guy was driving a pickup truck, and he had a trailer with a bunch of lawnmowers on the back of it. And he was just cruising down the road. He wasn't speeding or doing anything. He just didn't see what was happening with all that, because it happened really quickly. And that old man he stopped, and then he started to go, and he just pulled right out in front of that guy that was pulling that truck. And that truck ran right into him. I thought he was going to ricochet and hit us. We were in the turning lane trying to turn left. And this was several years ago when all this happened, but I was like, oh my gosh. So it was a major collision right there. And I got out of the street, moved over, and then I tried to, no, actually, I just got out of my car and tried to go over to the old man and see if I could help him. And I didn't know anything to do. Like, he was barely conscious. Um, his he had a cut on his head. He hit his forehead, and he had a cut on his head, and he was just kind of sitting there and moaning a little bit. And the poor guy in the pickup truck, he was moaning, and And I was, I felt so helpless. I had no idea how to address this guy, what to do for him, what to check for, like anything. And I'm like, dude, I'm a doctor, and I don't know anything about that emergency moment right there. I'm a wellness guy. And all of a sudden, a nurse showed up, and she just jumped right into action. Like she saw the whole thing too, and she was on the same street, and she just jumped right into action. And she came over there and she said, "Sir, can you open your eyes? Can you tell me what day it is? Can you tell me your name?" And she started going through all this checklist stuff, and she started talking to him, and I was like, I just stepped away and got out of the way and let them. By that time, the police are starting to get there, and the ambulance is coming, and all this sort of thing is. It's and There's a lot of people helping, and so I just kind of got out of the way, and I just thought to myself, that's not my game. And that lady, whoever that was, that nurse that day, when she showed up, she knew way more about it than I did. She really did. And it's like, that's what I told the girl today. I said, look, I don't know anything about nursing. You're the expert in nursing, but I know a little bit about the spine, and I know about the nervous system. And I'm telling you, you're gonna do good with what we're doing. So uh, anyway, that was a good story. But let me say something else today. So I have another patient that she saw me last week. I gave her her notebook, all her stuff in it. And I told her, I said, I think you need to go there's a specific thing I want you to go get checked. And it was abdominal aorta, because it was calcified, and I could see the posterior border of the abdominal aorta, but I couldn't see the anterior border. I couldn't quite tell exactly, but it looked like it might be inflated to me. And I said, I think you should go get that checked. I think that I want you to talk to your medical doctor about getting that checked, because I don't know exactly what's going on with that right there. And we're supposed to pay attention to that. If that's too large, then um, you can have a problem. So she got confused. The patient got confused, and she took the X-ray and circled some spots on the X-ray and showed it to her medical doctor. Now she's 70 something years old. She's not a doctor. She's not a chiropractor. She didn't really understand what she was doing, and she accidentally circled some bowel gas, and that'll show up on your X-rays as it's you can see it. It shows up like little bubbles on the X-ray, and so she asked the doctor to get this checked, and the doctor was like, who told you need to get that checked? And she said, well, I went to my chiropractor, and he said I needed to get it checked. And he was like, oh, please, this is all that is bowel gas. That's not any issue whatsoever. Okay, she was the one that made the mistake. Okay, she got confused about what I was talking about. It was my fault that I didn't throw it and get it caught. I'm not blaming her on that. She got confused about what I was talking about on the X-ray, and when she told the medical doctor when she circled the bowel gas and told the medical doctor that I told her that was her aorta, now all of a sudden you can see what would happen in the whole exchange of things. The medical doctor is not talking to me directly. I'm not talking to him directly. The patient is in between the two of us, and now we've got something that's going on and where the medical doctor thinks that I'm an idiot because I said that she needs to have her aorta checked out, her abdominal aorta checked out because of the bowel gas. That's not the truth, right? So I can see where sometimes the communication breaks down, and then someone gets accused of saying something that they didn't necessarily say, and that could go both ways with the other nurse that I was talking about today too. But I don't think so. I don't think it went that way in that particular case. But that was an interesting moment right there. I think sometimes the patients get a little bit confused about what we're talking about, and so when you're communicating with your medical doctor about what your chiropractor said, it might be a great idea if those two guys could communicate with each other to try to help make sure that that they were being very clear with each other so that you get the best care that you need. She's going to get that checked out. We're going to get an answer for it. Hopefully, it's not a big deal, um, but I think it's worth getting checked out. Anyway, that's just stuff we've been doing. That's life right there. That's life at the Rock today on a Thursday. That's what we've been doing all day long. And so now back to this article we've been working on all week long. If you guys haven't seen any of these shows, I think there's been some pretty cool shows this week, and I think we've done a pretty good job talking about lumbar biomechanics, increased curve, decreased curve, what's going on with the lumbar spine, the disc involvement, and now disc nutrition. And that's where I wanted to pick up where we left off last night, because there's a lot more in this article that I want to talk about. And I want to see if we could tie it into the cervical curve as well. So let's get to it. And let me get us back to where we were. Because we've been working through this article for the last several nights. And I think it's been pretty good. If you guys haven't seen it, go back and watch it. Go to the Rock Health and Wellness Center's page and watch it, because it does a good job of explaining to you. I think these last few shows have done a good job of explaining to you how you get nutrients to that disc and what exactly that disc is. And let's make sure that we do understand that. Let me share this window with you, just to make sure that you understand what we're talking about. What we're talking about, don't pay any attention for you guys that can see this on social media. And don't pay any attention to the red right here. This is just all we're doing is we're looking at a spine model. I didn't grab my spine model tonight. We're looking at a spine model, and there's a vertebrae, and then there's a disc. So you got a bone and a disc, and a bone and a disc. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the intervertebral disc. That's the material, the cushion, the padding that's in between each one of those bones right there. That's what we're talking about. And what we've discovered and what we've shared with you this week is that there's very little blood supply in that disc. And the blood supply is coming off through the bone. Like you can kind of see, maybe just a little bit, you kind of see these little holes that are in the bone right there. And see if I can see it on my phone, so maybe you guys can see it. If you look really closely, if I was to change the view, and you look really close right here, you might be able to see that. See if I can get the window back open. Anyway, we'll go with it right there. Yes, it's not making that very big, and I'm not sure how to do it, but you can see these little holes in the bone, and that's where those blood vessels are coming in. The blood vessels are coming from the aorta, and they're coming in through the bone, and they're making the loops. And the loops is what's feeding the nutrients into the disc. So that when we're talking about intervertebral disc nutrition, that's what we're talking about. The disc in between your vertebrae, and how do you keep them healthy? How do you keep that disc healthy? And so let's go through. Let's keep going through some of this, because we talked about disorders that affect the microcirculation, restrict capillary flow, and increase disc degeneration. That was a very important point from last night. Environmental factors such as smoking can restrict blood flow through the capillaries feeding the disc. The cartilaginous end plate is a critical component in the transport pathway. The end plate, the end of the disc. Sclerosis of the bony end plate and increase in bone mineral density decrease contact area with the cartilaginous end plate, and hence reduce the end plate permeability and are associated with an increased disc degeneration. I'm going to draw that for you because I want you to understand what it means. I want you to understand, and I'm gonna blow it up even bigger because I want you to understand what it means. And we drew a little bit of this last night. If we have a vertebra, and then we have another one, and then we have a disc between the two of them, that cartilaginous end plate is talking about the end plate of the disc. It's just saying that there has to be some sort of surface right there of the disc itself. And that's what we're really talking about, is a little bit of that surface of the disc itself. Okay? So the statement in the article is sclerosis of the bony end plate and increase in bone mineral density decreases contact area with the cartilaginous end plate. And what that is saying, man, I'll tell you what. Hang on. I know. It's like, what? Let's don't get technical difficulties in here tonight and mess this whole thing up. Okay. What that is saying is this, that this bone, just imagine that that's that vertebra that we just looked at, and just imagine that that's a bone, and bone grows in the direction of force. So you put pressure on that vertebra, and what happens is you get more bone. You get more bone at the end plate that's going across there. You get more bone at the end plate that's going across there. And now you lose that blood supply that's coming in there and dropping that off. You lose that blood supply right there because you've got bone in the way of the blood, and now you can't get the blood into the disc, and now the disc becomes dry and brittle. It begins to chip away, and there you go. Now you got a problem. That's what the article is saying right there about sclerosis means, and like you've got more bone right there of the bony end plate. It's getting hard. Okay, such calcification impedes transport from the blood supply into the disc. That's exactly what we're saying. Calcification impedes the blood supply into the disc. Cells will not survive if glucose levels decrease less than approximately 0.5 millimeters, or if lactic acid is not removed, and consequently the extracellular pH decreases to less than approximately a pH of 6.7. That's a super important piece of information right there. Cells will not survive if the glucose levels decrease or if the lactic acid level increase. You guys, you've heard of lactic acid before, like you've heard of, and it's not exactly all you physiology people, don't get fussy with me right here. The lactic acid buildup after you work out, let's just call it that, okay? Maybe it's not lactic acid, but I think the people that are listening to the show have heard that before. You work out and your muscles get sore, right? You're increasing metabolism in the cell. The cell is increasing its oxygen metabolism. It's getting rid of carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide in the whole process of physiology is there's a process of it that gets it turned into lactate or lactic acid or some form of fashion but I think we can say that for ourselves. Your muscles are sore, right? Well, you've got too much, they become too acidic. And what this is saying is that the cells will not survive if you don't get enough glucose to them. Why won't the cells survive if you don't get enough glucose to them? Because glucose is what the cell uses in the mitochondria in the process of making ATP. You got to be able to get that power onto the cell. And I've said that since 2009. If the cell dies in the disc, you have degenerative disc disease. You have a disc problem. Which I think is stupid sentence. I don't think you don't have a disease process. You have abnormal physiology, but that's not really what we're talking about tonight. If that cell dies in your foot, you're going to have a foot disease. If that cell dies in your heart, you're going to have a heart disease. If that cell dies in your liver, you're going to have a liver disease. And if the cell dies anywhere in your body, those cells, that part of your body is not going to function properly. And that's what goes on when your mitochondria are malfunctioning. And that mitochondria malfunction when your 6:3 ratio is out of control. And your 6:3 ratio is out of control when you eat too many sixes and not enough fish oil. We got to take a break. You guys stick with us. We'll be right back right after these messages. Walk by Faith Radio. So if we become too acidic, then we will have a problem with our disc. That's what the article is trying to say to us right there. If we become too acidic, we'll have a problem with our disc. That's also, according to Dr. Guest in Extreme Health book, that's also why we have a problem with osteoporosis, because we became too acidic. That's also the same thing. Cancer grows in an acidic environment, they say, right? That pH level has a lot to do with how we function. And if we become too acidic, then we can have a problem. And there are things, sometimes like coffee, sometimes like Cokes, sugar, red meat, all kinds of meat, animal products, animal proteins. You can go back, if you want a good book to read, at least the first part of it. It's called The China Study by T. Colin Campbell. That's a really good book to break that down too. There's some things that go on with that pH level. That's where your green leafy vegetables are alkaline in your body. And so that's one of the things, that's what I want to get to after the break tonight, is I want to get to the idea of healthy blood, healthy disc. Unhealthy blood, unhealthy disc. That's something that it's really been good for me, because I don't think I've done a better job in my entire career of explaining that to you guys that are listening to the show. Like, this is the best I've understood it in a way that I can explain it to you, is through this article, and it's the best way that you might be able to understand, because I don't think we understand this at all. I don't think we get it. Oh, I've got degenerative disc disease, right? How many of you out there listening to the show have gone to your doctor and your doctor told you have degenerative disc disease, and you have no idea how you got degenerative disc disease? And nobody ever explained to you how you got degenerative disc disease, right? Let me get us back on the show. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We've been trying to break down this article. So, and we're talking about degenerative disc problems and nutrition to the disc. And I asked the listeners on social media while we were away at the break, I said, how many of you guys listening to the show, that you guys on the radio, how many of you guys have gone to your doctor before and your doctor told you that you have degenerative disc disease? And how many times did they tell you why? And I'm going to be willing to bet, anybody want to win a $5 Starbucks card? Be the first person to respond to that. Have you ever been told that? Yes or no? And have you ever If they did tell you that you had degenerative disc disease, did they tell you why you had it? Yeah. You want to respond to that? I'll send you a $5 gift card from Starbucks or wherever your coffee of choice place is, because you know that coffee's pretty good for you. So I don't think they've told you that. I don't think that we've done a good job of actually understanding why we get that. So I want to take a moment and just step away from the article, and I want to draw this out a little bit better, and I want to draw it out in a way that gives us a little bit of understanding as to why what I'm talking about right now. I think this is a vital. It's a vital piece of information that would be really nice to understand. I'm going to just draw these a little bit bigger, and I'm going to draw two lumbar vertebrae for you guys that are on the radio, and I'm going to draw the disc that's between them, and then I'm going to draw the aorta that's coming down, and I'm going to draw the blood supply that's coming out, and the blood supply that is feeding that disc. And for some reason, I keep losing that. So I keep losing my little drawing apparatus right here. Okay. This is the front. Okay. This is the back. All right. The blood supply, the blood is coming into the vertebral body. It's looping down. Where it loops down, it's dropping off the glucose and the oxygen. It's dropping off the glucose and the oxygen into the disc. And the glucose and the oxygen is having to diffuse its way down. It's having to diffuse its way down to the middle of the disc and up to the middle of the disc so that it can supply the entire disc and all the cells in the disc. It's got to be able to get it all the way around. It's got to drop down to it. It's got to get it around there. In the middle of that, we've got a nucleus. We've got but we got to get nutrition and oxygen to those cells in order for them to function properly. Okay. Now, you ever done the dishes at your house and you didn't have a dishwasher, so you had to do the dishes in the sink? That's what we had to do my whole life because our dishwasher went out. My dad wasn't really a good fix-it kind of guy, so we had to wash dishes for the rest of our lives. The time we were living in that double-wide mobile home on that ranch, and so sometimes we'd have to help mom do the dishes. So we'd have a clean. We had the two parts of the sink, and we had one part of it we filled up with some really clean water, and then the other part was the rinsing station, and then the other part was the drying station, and that was me and my brother and my sister. We were working through that whole thing, right? And we'd scrape all the food off, and then we would put the dishes down in the water. But when we started with the water was super clean. All it had in it was dish soap. It was water and dish soap with the bubbles and all that stuff, right? But by the time we got finished with all the dishes, that water was nasty. It was full of spaghetti or whatever it was that we had to eat, right? We rinsed all that stuff off, and then we washed the plates and dunked it, and washed the plates and scrubbed the plates off and dunked it, and then we took them to the next part of the sink and rinsed them off, and then we dried them off like that, right? But when we started, the water was nice and clean, and when we finished, the water wasn't. It had all kinds of stuff and particles in it and that type of thing. I want you to think about your blood I want you to think about the blood that's flowing through your body. And I want you to think about all the parts that are in the blood that's flowing through your body. And I want you to think about what you're feeding yourself on a daily basis and whether or not the stuff that you're feeding yourself might actually be clogging up your liver or leaking through your gut and getting into the blood supply. Could you have some nasty stuff in your blood because of your choices on the things that you're eating? And the answer to that is yes, you can. And when it gets into the blood, that's when the brain recognizes it and says, you got to get as far away from the heart and the brain as you can. We cannot be having all those little pieces of spaghetti floating around in our bloodstream. We can't have that. Like I don't want that in the brain. Get it out of the brain. Keep it away from the brain. Keep it away from the heart. So what does the brain do? It pushes all that stuff away from our heart and our brain, and it pushes it into our extremities, into our hands and our feet. Puts it in our hands and our feet. And what happens to our hands and our feet? They start to get all nasty. Our fingers get crooked. All of our joints get inflamed. Like our hand will get, remember when I was talking about the guy that had the contracture in those big tendons in your hand get all jacked up? Yes, that all starts, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, that all starts in your gut. That starts from leaky gut, but it didn't get to my hand through it didn't get through my hand by just going through the bone. It got there by floating around in the blood. It's the bloodstream. And I just want you to think about the refined carbohydrates, the partially hydrogenated oils, the high fructose corn syrups, the artificial colors and sweeteners, the all of the things that we put in our body that might make our blood nasty or might make our blood inflamed. And now, what I want you to imagine is that nasty blood floating through your body, floating now comes through your aorta. And let's give it a puke green kind of color. Let's say this nasty blood is coming through here, and now all of a sudden this nasty blood goes through this blood vessel and down here. And as your body is trying to drop off the glucose and the oxygen, it also drops off some other nasty stuff. Just by design. Not by design, by accident. All of a sudden, you got some other nasty stuff that's getting into that disc. And because you're eating that nasty stuff and your blood is not all that pure and pristine, you might actually be a person that doesn't like to move a lot. And if you don't like to move a lot, you're not really causing any imbibition going on in that spine. You're not really causing any of that, what's the instrument? The instrument. I can't think of the word at the moment. Sometimes it happens when I have my glasses on. The in and out, the pushing and pulling, the pushing and pulling, the pushing and pressing, that movement that's supposed to be going on in this segment right here is not going on in that segment. And because it's not going on in that segment, and this nasty blood is dropping off into the disc, and this stuff is now diffusing across the disc, what we're getting is a sick disc. That's what we're getting. We're getting a sick, nasty disc. And that's going to become dry and brittle, and it's going to chip away. My brother-in-law used to say that 20 years ago. I used to listen to him talk to patients and say, hey, look, when the segment is not moving properly, the disc will become dry and brittle, and then it'll chip away, and that's what they call degenerative disc disease. I've said that to patients for 20 years. I've never explained this right here in that 20-year period of time. I never really broke it down and said, hey, look, this is the mechanism that's causing that. This is the mechanism that's partly causing that, because we're not getting, it's diffusing nasty stuff into the disc, and the disc is becoming sick. The disc is becoming sick. And then we're going to end up with the degenerative disc disease. Degenerative disc disease, or DJD, degenerative joint disease. And that can happen in your knee cartilage, that can happen in your shoulder, that can happen in like throughout your, now we're talking about the disc themselves in the vertebrae, right? And you say, well, Jason, what? Give me an example. Okay, I have an example for you. I just happen to be prepared with an example so that you can see it. This is what I showed you last night. Okay, this is what I'm talking about right here. That's degenerative disc disease. That's degenerative disc disease. That's degenerative disc disease. That's a bone spur. That's a bone spur. All that, that's a calcified aorta right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's degenerative disc disease. And how'd you get that? You brought it on yourself. That's the honest truth. The honest truth is you brought it on yourself, because, as I've said lots of times, and I want you to hear me say it again, degenerative disc disease is abnormal movement, and the abnormal movement didn't allow for the imbibition, which pressed down on the disc, which didn't allow for the lactic acid to get out of the cells, which caused the disc to now degenerate. We didn't get the glucose in. We didn't get the lactic acid out. We're not moving anything out of there. We're not keeping that thing nice and hydrated. And now that disc is getting sick. Okay? That's abnormal movement. But the other part of that is abnormal chemistry. Abnormal chemistry. Too much inflammation in your blood. And those things are not hereditary. That has nothing to do with your daddy or your granddaddy or your grandmama or nothing. I hear that all the time. I hear people say, yeah, my mom's got neck trouble, but my grandma had neck trouble, and that degenerative disc thing, that disease, that degenerative disc disease, yeah, my daddy had that. Yeah, guess what? Your dad had bad biomechanics and bad biochemistry. It wasn't his genetics. Yeah, and I'll prove it to you. Let me see if I got a cervical spine. Yeah, here's a cervical spine. Okay, now, because here's what you're going to say. You're going to say that. Let's look at this one right down here. We've got right down here. We've got degenerative disc disease. We've got degenerative disc disease right there. And you're going to say, well, it's genetic. Well, if it's genetic, why is there no disease in this joint, and why is there no disease in this joint? How come it's only the joints that are having the abnormal pressure in them that's causing that thing, right? How come it's not all of them? Because if the joint is moving properly, it can even flush out the toxins that are in there if it's moving properly. If it's not moving properly and it's toxic, it will degenerate. But it's either one of those things can create that. But it's not genetics, because if it was genetics, how come this disc have some sort of different genetics than this disc down here does? No, they're the same genetics. Look at the curves. Look at the curves in the spine. Look how flat the curves are. Look at how they're off, how the red line and the green line are off. There's degenerative disc disease going on right here and down below it. Right? There's this is a flat spine. This is an increased curve, but we have this L5 problem going on down here at the bottom. That's an L5 S1 spondylolisthesis, which has moved forward, and there's degenerative disc disease that's below it. This is not moving properly, and the chemistry is wrong, and that's what's causing it right there. So if we were to clean up our blood and we were to keep our spine moving, is it conceivable that our spine would last longer? And I'm going to present for consideration that that answer is yes. It's conceivable that our spine would last longer. If we've already gotten to this point where, because these are patients that come into my office, if they come into my office and they're already at this point right here, what are we going to do about it? We're just going to kick them to the curb and say, well, sorry, it's too bad. No, because I can tell you this is not always where the pain comes from. It's just the fact that it's degenerative. And that's the other part of the article that I want to bring to you tonight is the bottom part. I'm going to skip through the rest of this. We might come back to it tomorrow. But the question is, where is the pain coming from? This is Vert Mooney, MD, in Spine, October 1987, volume 12, number 8, pages 754 through 759. This article was Dr. Mooney's presidential address of the International Society for the Study of the Lumbar Spine, May 29th through June 2nd, 1986, in Dallas, Texas. Mechanical events, make sure okay. Mechanical events can be translated into chemical events relating to pain. Persistent pain in the back with referred pain into the leg is largely on the basis of abnormalities within the disc. Chemistry of the disc is based on the relationship between this mucopolysaccharide production and water content. So there's some chemistry. You don't need to know what that word means. You just need to know that there's some chemistry right there that has to do with this. This is the relationship. Mechanical activity has a great deal to do with the exchange of water and oxygen concentration in the disc. Mechanical activity, yes. An important aspect of disc nutrition and health is the mechanical aspect of the disc related to fluid mechanics. The pumping action maintains the nutrition and biomechanical function of the intervertebral disc. Thus, research substantiates the view that unchanging posture as a result of constant pressure, such as standing, sitting, or lying, leads to an interruption of pressure-dependent transfer of liquids. Actually, the human intervertebral disc lives because of movement. It lives because of movement. The fluid content in the disc can be changed by mechanical activity, and the fluid content is largely bound to the proteoglycans, especially of the nucleus. In summary, what is the answer to the question of where the pain is coming from in the chronic low back pain patient? I believe that the source ultimately is in the disc. Basic studies and clinical experience suggest that mechanical therapy is the most rational approach to relief of this painful condition. Prolonged rest and passive physical therapy modalities no longer have a place in the treatment of the chronic problem. This is from Vert Mooney, MD. Right? Listen to what he's saying. Prolonged rest and passive physical therapy modalities no longer have a place in the treatment of the chronic problem. Got to get that disc moving. You got to get the nutrients to the disc. You got to get the inflammation out of the disc. And you got to get the disc moving. You got to get movement in your spine. When you get movement in your spine, you'll keep your spine healthy. You'll keep it healthy for a long, long time. And when we look at it, and we look especially in the cervical curve, the cervical spine, the neck, when we look at it in the neck, it's where the pressures are. Look, this middle curve right here is a normal cervical curve. Each one of those, there we go. Each one of those vertebrae right there are touching the back of the back of the vertebra are touching the green line. That's a normal cervical curve. Okay? This is a reversed cervical curve. This C7 and C6 and C5 are way behind the green line. So that means that instead of having a curve like you're supposed to have, it's reversed and going the opposite direction. What is happening to the disc at the area of reversal? It's getting compressed. And when it's getting compressed, it's losing its movement. And when it loses its movement, then we lose our picture. I don't know why, but we'll replace it. You got to get that this segment right here is not moving properly. And when it doesn't move properly, it begins to deteriorate. Same thing with this one. This one is forward head posture. This one is forward head posture. We got way too much forward head posture, and that puts lots of pressure on your low back. We've got the degeneration of the disc going on right here, pressing on the disc. This disc is fine. This disc is fine. Now we've got it where we're down there. There. This one's fine. This one's fine. But down here, that one's thin. That one's thin because it's being compressed. It's being compressed because it's not moving properly. It's not moving properly because we've lost the curve. We've lost the curve because of multiple reasons. But the very first thing is we've lost the curve because of the brain. I would go to the frontal lobe. I would go to the frontal lobe first and say that's the place where we start at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, in the brain. What are we going to do? We're going to do brain exercises to change the disc problem in your neck. We're going to do adjustments, but we're going to do brain exercises. We're going to do muscle work. We're going to do cervical traction. Those are the things that we're going to do to restore the curve, to restore the proper function, to give you the best opportunity to continue to live as well as you can possibly live. And if you don't know what your cervical curve is, you're walking around just like it's like, man, you should check it out. That's what the conversation with the nurse was today. Conversation with the nurse was, look, you got to get that. You've got a reverse cervical curve. You've got pressure on C5 and C6. It's deteriorating. The rest of your spine is fine. That one spot is the spot that we need to get corrected. And she said, how do we do that? I said, we start with brain exercises. We do brain exercises to get your brain to fire, to turn off your flexor muscles, to get you into extension. We got to turn off your flexor muscles to get you into extension. We got to get your eyes up, just like you started when you were 3 months old. And then I had the little girl that was 3 months old come in this afternoon, and her mom said, she started rolling over. And I said, how old is she? And she said, she's about 3 months old. And I was like, she said she's rolling over sooner than we expected. And I said, not sooner than I expected. I say it all the time. You rolled over when you were 3 months old, you got your eyes up. So you know what I did when I was adjusting her? I laid her on her tummy and let her look up at her mom. I put her in extension. I let her lay on her tummy, get her head up. Look at your mama and get your head going. Get your eyes up. What are the eyes doing? They're firing the frontal lobe. They're firing the brain. They're firing the upper brain. They're getting the brain to fire the way it's supposed to. That gets us up. Yeah. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of stuff for you guys. I know it's like, man, there's to listen to it is probably difficult, but I think it's cool stuff. And I think if you go back and look this whole week, you've gotten quite the education on disc, and you're probably smarter than most of the people on the planet if you can figure all this stuff out. That's the end of the show. I hope you guys had a great time. I hope it's helping you. I hope it's making your life better. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Let me know if I can help you. And otherwise, you guys have a great night. And thanks for watching the show. I appreciate it.